This happened just a few months ago. I'm Jake, 33, a freelance graphic designer. I moved to this place to find some peace after a rough breakup. My roommate was away for the weekend, and I was enjoying the quiet. A simple Friday night, I settled in with a movie, nothing special. The house was still. At least, that's what I thought. I've never stopped thinking about it. As I watched, I heard a rhythmic tapping from the wall. It was light but distinct. I figured it came from my neighbor's place. Maybe they were working on a project. I dismissed it and focused on the film, but the sound wouldn't quit. It went on for hours. I felt a little uneasy, but I shrugged it off. Just neighbors, right? The next night, the tapping changed. Now I could hear whispers too, soft and almost too quiet to make out. It felt like someone was just on the other side of the wall, lost in a conversation I couldn't grasp. I told myself to ignore it, but my heart raced. I turned my volume up. The whispers faded, but not completely. I shivered and wrapped myself in a blanket. Maybe it was just my imagination. By the third night, sleep was elusive. I kept noticing odd things. Flickering lights sometimes and shadows moving just out of my line of sight. Once, I saw a figure in a dark hoodie outside my window. They were staring at me, and I froze. My heart hammered in my chest. I wiped the condensation from the glass to get a better look. No one else was around. Then, suddenly, they vanished. I blinked, and the figure was gone. Maybe it was nothing. Just a trick of the night. I told myself I was being silly. The next day, curiosity got the better of me. I stepped outside to check the neighboring townhouse. What if I found out my worries weren't unfounded? I walked next door and knocked. I waited, but no one responded. The door was locked. The place looked untouched, but the air felt wrong. I could almost feel a presence behind the door. I turned to leave, but there was a shift like someone was watching me. I glanced back at the window. Empty. I was alone. That night, the noises escalated. It was unlike anything before. Thumping, almost like footsteps. I crouched on the floor, holding my breath. My hands felt clammy. I decided I had to see what was going on, but dread curled in my stomach. At the peak of the chaos, I heard the whispers again, clearer this time. Let me in. The voice felt chilling, as if it was coming from right behind the wall. My heart was racing. The shadows danced in the corners of my vision. I grabbed my phone, intending to call someone, but all I could think was, what was really happening next door? I had to find out. Then there was silence. The tapping stopped. It didn't feel right. I felt like I was being watched. And just then, a knock echoed through the house, a sound that didn't come from the walls. I turned, but nobody was there. Am I really home alone? I didn't sleep that night. The silence was heavy, like a weight pressing down on my chest. I sat on the couch, clutching my phone like a lifeline. It felt useless, but I couldn't shake the urge to call someone. Anyone. Instead, I scrolled mindlessly through social media, glaring at bright screens that felt foreign in this darkness. The next morning, I was exhausted. I needed caffeine. I stumbled to the kitchen, the quiet still enveloping me. As I reached for the coffee canister, I noticed something on the counter. It was a small key, old and tarnished. How did it get there? I searched my memory, but I had no clue. Was it something my roommate had left behind? I picked it up, turning it over in my hand. It felt heavier than it looked. Curiosity tugged at me again. I decided to check the neighbor's house one more time. Maybe this key belonged to them. My heart raced as I knocked again on the door. Nothing. The feeling of being watched returned, but it was different now. I felt like I was meant to find something. I glanced around the yard and the darkened windows. In a moment of recklessness, I tried the key in the lock. To my surprise, it turned, and the door creaked open slightly. My breath caught in my throat. I hesitated. Should I go in? I felt the pull of the unknown, a mixture of dread and excitement. I stepped inside. The air smelled stale, and dust gathered on every surface. It felt like no one had been inside for years. As I moved through the rooms, I kept my phone flashlight on, illuminating cobwebs and empty spaces. I searched for anything that might explain those strange noises. In the back room, I found a small attic door slightly ajar. A draft pulled at me, whispering secrets from above. With a quick glance to make sure I was truly alone, I squeezed through the opening. The attic was cramped and dark. I scanned the space, but all I saw were faded boxes and eerie shadows. As I moved deeper, my light flickered, making me feel disoriented. Just as I began to think this was a dead end, I spotted something unusual on the floor: a journal. I picked it up, its leather cover cracked with age. As I opened it, the pages fluttered, revealing scrawled handwriting. It was filled with strange drawings and incoherent ramblings. "It knows I'm here," seemed to repeat throughout, along with warnings about staying away from the walls. I felt a chill run through me as I read. It was like someone had documented everything I had experienced in the last few nights. The attic door slammed shut behind me. The sudden bang echoed in the confined space, and I jumped. Panic surged as I fumbled for my phone. I raised the light to find the door fastened tight, leaving me trapped. My heart raced. I could hear whispers again, but they were louder now. They surrounded me, filling the room. "Let me in," the voices murmured, just as I heard on the other side of the wall. That's when I saw it, a shadow moving in the dim light. I wasn't alone anymore. I froze as the shadow shifted just out of reach of my phone's light. My breath quickened, and I fought the urge to bolt. Instead, I stood still, straining to see what had stirred in the attic gloom. It was subtle at first, like the flickering of a flame. I could almost convince myself it was a trick of the light, something born from my anxiety. But then it moved again, closer this time. "Hello?" I called, my voice barely above a whisper. It felt silly, addressing something unseen. The shadow paused before darting further back into the darkness. I hesitated, torn between the desire to know and the instinct to escape. Panic took hold of me as I turned to the attic door. Still stuck tight. I pounded on the wood with my fist, but the sound felt small in that oppressive space. Could I climb down through the attic window? Or maybe I could shove something against the door to break it open. Just as I contemplated my escape, a whisper filled the air, clearer now. "You shouldn't have come here." The voice sounded like a warning, filled with equal parts sadness and anger. I backed away from the door, heart racing. Should I respond? Maybe it was just a figment of my imagination. But it felt real, like it was brewing just on the edge of my senses. In a moment of desperation, I moved deeper into the attic, chasing the shadow with my phone light, hoping to reveal whatever lurked in the darkness. My feet brushed against something cold. I turned the light down to see a metal object on the floor, another key. It was similar to the one I had found at home, but this one was rusted and jagged. Why was it here? My gut twisted with equal parts fear and curiosity. What did it unlock? As I picked it up, the air around me shifted again. The whispers grew frantic, rising and falling like leaves caught in a storm. "It's watching you," they said. "Get out." The urgency in their tone snapped me back to reality. I felt exposed, vulnerable. I had to leave. Just as I turned to make my way back to the door, the shadow moved again. This time it hung closer, revealing a shape, a figure, hunched and indistinct. It flickered in and out of focus, but the chilling sensation of being watched intensified. No longer just a trick of light, this was something corporeal and menacing. I gripped the second key, feeling its jagged edges pressing into my palm, desperate for a way out. Who are you? I shouted into the void. The figure didn't answer. It simply stood there, silent and waiting. Then, just as fast as it had come, the figure began to dissolve into the shadows. The whispers intensified, swirling around me, "Let us in. Let us in." Before I could move, the attic door rattled violently, and then it burst open with a force that nearly knocked me off my feet. Light flooded in, and I squinted against it. All at once, the whispers ceased. In the doorway stood a figure, silhouetted by the bright light behind. "What are you doing in here?" I felt a rush of relief and fear. Who was this person? And why did I feel like they already knew more than I did? The figure in the doorway shifted, allowing the light to spill into the attic like a river breaking through a dam. I blinked, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. It was a woman, probably in her late 30s. Her short hair framed her face, and there was a mixture of concern and annoyance in her eyes. "Are you okay?" she asked, stepping closer. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Sort of," I mumbled, feeling my heart still racing. I heard something up here." She glanced around the attic, eyes darting toward the shadows that still clung to the corners. "I figured the weird noises were just from the old house settling, but I didn't think anyone would be up here." "Why didn't you just call out?" "I did," I said, my voice rising with frustration. "I thought I was alone." "What are you doing here?" She hesitated, then sighed. "I should have introduced myself. I live next door. I was just checking on this place after hearing those noises, and I thought I'd see if anyone needed help." I felt a flash of embarrassment. A neighbor. I had been chasing ghosts while she was just trying to be nice. "Sorry. I didn't mean to scare you," she added, folding her arms across her chest, as if trying to shield both of us from the unsettling atmosphere. Just as I was about to explain my own strangeness about the attic, something shifted in the corner. My phone light flickered, and I instinctively turned it back toward the darkened space. It was gone, but the sensation of being watched returned with force. "Did you see that?" I pointed at the shadows, my pulse quickening again. There was something there. Her brow furrowed. "I didn't see anything. But a lot of weird things happen in this part of the neighborhood." Her eyes darted back toward the attic door. "Some people say this house is haunted." I opened my mouth to respond, but the words caught in my throat. Just then, a loud creak echoed from the floor below us, like an unseen hand had pressed down on the wood. We both froze, the air thick with tension. "What was that?" I asked, my voice quivering. "I don't know. It sounded like something or someone downstairs," she replied, taking a hesitant step back toward the door. I felt a surge of determination grip me. I wasn't leaving yet. "We should check it out," I suggested, though I wasn't sure if it was bravery or sheer foolishness driving me. She raised an eyebrow but then nodded slowly. "Okay. Just stay close to me." As we descended the stairs, the silence felt suffocating, a blanket draping over our shoulders. But just as we reached the landing, I spotted something on the floor, a small wooden box, slightly ajar, revealing a glimmer of silver inside. "That's strange," I murmured, moving closer. Then everything went black. The lights flickered and died, plunging us into darkness. The only sound was the frantic beating of my heart. Had we really disturbed something? "Can you see anything?" she whispered, fear punctuating her tone. Before I could respond, I heard a faint whisper, curling around us like smoke. "You found it." My blood ran cold. The whispers were back. But this time, they weren't gentle. They were urgent, demanding, and filled with a terrifying familiarity. What had I unlocked? I stumbled backward, the cold dread curling my stomach like a fist. "What do you mean we found it?" I managed to stammer, my voice a mere tremor in the void. The woman's hand sought out mine in the dark, squeezing it tightly. "I don't know," she whispered, her breath shaky. But we need to stay quiet. Whatever that was, it feels alive. I finished for her, the word tasting bitter in my mouth. We both held our breaths, straining against the oppressive darkness. I could hear faint whispers buzzing around us, but they were now layered with something else, rage. What if it's angry? She breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. Before I could reply, there was another sound, this one unmistakably real. A loud crash echoed from downstairs, as if something heavy had fallen over. I jumped, adrenaline racing through me. We should get out of here, I insisted, but my feet felt glued to the floor, rooted in place by sheer terror. No, we can't, she insisted, her voice firm despite the shaking of her hands. I was taken aback by her resolve. If something is down there, we can't just leave it. It could be dangerous. I clung to her hand and nodded, my instincts telling me to run, but my body was betraying my will. Together, we stepped away from the attic railing, inching toward the staircase, hearts pounding like a bass drum in the empty air. The whispers grew louder, vibrating in the corners of my mind. You found it, the chant multiplied, echoing through the nearly empty house. As we reached the stairs, the light from my phone flickered back to life. Thank God, I exhaled, gripping the phone tighter. The glow fuzzily illuminated the dark edges of the hallway, but it also revealed more than I expected. The wooden box I had seen earlier lay open on the floor, but now its contents had spilled out, silver trinkets and worn photographs scattered across the floor like whispers waiting to be heard. I knelt down, heart racing, because one photo in particular caught my eye. It showed a family, a smiling couple with two little girls. They looked so happy, but the woman in the photo, her face was eerily familiar. It was like looking at a reflection from a long-forgotten dream. Do you recognize her? I asked, not tearing my eyes away from the image. A chill ran through her as she leaned closer. That looks like, but before she could finish, the whispers crescendoed into a shrill scream. The box vibrated violently, rattling against the floor as if it had a heartbeat of its own. Get back! I cried, yanking her away. We stumbled back together, shielding ourselves from the unseen chaos. Why is this happening? She gasped, leaning against the wall, her breath mingled with fear and disbelief. That was when I heard it, a voice cutting through the chaos, deep and commanding. You must finish what you started. I froze. What exactly had I started? As the shouting whispers began to fade, I felt a chilling realization wash over me. The more I dug into this mystery, the more connected I became to whatever lingered in this house. I had to find answers. What do we do now? She asked, her eyes darting around the shadows as if expecting something to emerge. Then, unexpectedly, I heard a knock at the front door. It echoed softly through the stillness. Someone's here, I said, a mix of dread and hope sparking in my chest. I wasn't going to face this alone. The door swung open. I had to know who or what was not far behind. I hesitated at the open door, bracing for whatever might walk through. The hinges creaked as the cold night air pushed its way inside. My heart raced as I squinted into the darkness beyond the threshold. Hello. I called out, my voice nearly swallowed by the chilling breeze. No response. Just silence. The woman beside me, her face pale, gripped my arm tightly. Maybe it's just someone lost, she suggested, though her voice wavered. I stepped outside, the thick carpet of leaves crunching under my shoes. My phone's flashlight chased away the shadows, revealing only the darkened yard and the creeping trees. Do you see anyone? I asked, backtracking slightly. Not yet, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Then I heard it again, another soft knock, but now it came from inside the house, a rhythmic tapping like fingernails on wood. The sound sent a jolt of fear through me. I turned back toward the door, but the woman grabbed my wrist. Wait. What if it's coming from upstairs? I stiffened. The attic. It felt like that space was alive with secrets and danger. We can't just stand here, I argued, trying to shake off the foreboding that clawed at my chest. But even as I spoke, I felt an inexplicable pull drawing me toward the staircase. I think we should check upstairs, she insisted, her eyes wide with determination. There might be something we missed. It felt like a bad idea, a sinking notion swirling with dread, but I found myself nodding anyway. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing thoughts. We had to know. Climbing the stairs, each creak echoed like a warning. I turned on my flashlight as we neared the attic door, the light barely illuminating the dusty hallway. The constant tapping was louder now, like a heartbeat pushing through the silence. Here goes nothing, I said, my voice shaky but resolute. I reached for the doorknob and paused, glancing back at her. I could see the hope mixed with fear in her eyes. Whatever happens, I began, but she interrupted. Just open it. Her voice held a spark of courage that ignited a flicker in me. I twisted the knob and pulled the door wide open, the hinges squealing in protest. The attic spread out before us like a forgotten time capsule. Dust motes swirled in the beam of light as I scanned the room. But the tapping stopped. Why is it so quiet? I whispered, an unsettling feeling twisting in my gut. Then, just as I was about to step inside, I saw it. A shadow flitted across the far wall. My breath caught in my throat. Did you see that? I asked, taking a cautious step forward. It was just a trick of the light, she said, though her voice trembled. But the moment I crossed the threshold, the whispers jolted back to life, sharp and accusatory. You must finish what you started. Fear clawed at my insides. I had to find out what this meant. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted something glimmering on the floor, a silver trinket, the same as those scattered below. I bent down tentatively to pick it up, and that was when I heard another crash, louder this time, coming from somewhere deep within the house. Get back! I shouted, feeling every instinct scream at me to flee. But I was already too deep, and I could sense it, a warm, unfurling energy surrounding me. Someone is in the house, I whispered, and as I turned to look back at her, I knew the night was only getting started. The air in the attic felt charged, thick with an energy that gave me chills. I clutched the silver trinket tightly as if it could protect me. The whispers grew louder, swirling around us like a storm, echoing the same message: you must finish what you started. My heart pounded in my chest. Did you hear that? I turned to the woman beside me. Her eyes were wide, reflecting my own fear. Yes, she said, her voice trembling. What do you think it means? Before I could answer, the crash came again, this time closer, an explosion of sound that bounced through the house. I barely had time to process it before adrenaline kicked in, and I found myself stumbling backward, still gripping the trinket. We need to get out of here. I yelled, the urgency in my voice sharper than I intended. I didn't wait for her response. I sprinted for the staircase, feeling the weight of the attic close in around me. As I reached the stairs, I hesitated. Should I keep running, or check the shadows behind me? Every instinct urged me to flee, but a nagging curiosity forced me to glance back into the attic, flashlight beam cutting through the dim light. Stay close, I warned, only half believing my own words. The woman had stepped into the attic now, drawn by the same curiosity. What if we find something? She asked, trying to sound brave. Or someone, I replied. I could hardly believe what I was saying. My gut twisted, urging me to turn and run. But she stepped further inside, and before I could stop her, she gasped. I felt my heart drop as I shifted my light toward her. There, in the far corner, a figure stood half hidden in darkness. It didn't move, just watched us with chilling intensity. Do you see them? I whispered, struggling to regain my breath. She nodded slowly, her expression frozen in terror. What do we do? I took a step forward, driven by instinct, but the weight of the moment held me back. The figure remained still, its outline barely visible. I felt exposed, like prey being watched by a predator, and the whispers surged again. Finish it. You must finish it. I was about to demand that we leave when the figure stepped out of the blackness, revealing a grotesque face twisted in agony. It looked barely human, as if the torment of ages had carved it into something otherworldly. I stumbled back, the flashlight flickering under the weight of my fear. What are you? I breathed, horrified as the figure lifted a hand, pointing directly at me. In that moment, I felt as if the air had been sucked out of the attic. Reality warped, and I struggled to comprehend what I was witnessing. I turned to the woman beside me, but she stood rooted to the spot, her eyes locked on the entity. The tension snapped like a fragile thread, and with a rush of instinct, I bolted down the staircase, pulling her out of the trance. Run! I shouted again, and this time she followed, her footsteps echoing behind me. We hurtled down the stairs, each step an urgent plea for safety. But as I reached the front door, it slammed shut with a force that rattled the frame. I turned the handle, but it wouldn't budge. A cold dread pooled in my stomach as I faced the chilling reality. The house was alive, and it wasn't letting us leave. Panic surged through me as I pushed against the door, but it remained steadfast. I turned back to look at the woman. We can't stay here. My voice was a desperate plea. She nodded, fear etched on her face. What do we do? My mind raced for options. The windows. They might be unlocked, but were they safe? I caught a glimpse of the dark figure in the attic through the open door, and my blood ran cold. There was no time to waste. Follow me. I shouted, darting toward the kitchen. The space felt suffocating, as if the walls were closing in on us. I scanned for an exit, heart pounding against my ribcage. The back door. It looked more promising, and I rushed to it, yanking the handle down. It clicked loudly, but when I pushed, it wouldn't budge. What is happening? I couldn't suppress the rising fear. I turned back, and the woman stood by the window, her face pale. It's locked too. She exclaimed. I can't believe this. A rush of warm air swept through the room, carrying with it a faint whisper that almost sounded like laughter. I shuddered, glancing back to the attic. I couldn't shake the feeling we were being watched, trapped not only by physical barriers but by something far more sinister. What if we go upstairs? She suggested. Maybe there's a way to get out from there. I hesitated. The upper floors had been the source of all our nightmares so far. But sitting here wouldn't save us. Okay, I said, steeling myself. Let us check. As we climbed the stairs, the house creaked ominously under our weight. Each step felt like a countdown. The whispers grew more frantic, echoing our footsteps. Finish it. Finish it. The second floor felt colder, the air thick with a sense of dread. I moved toward a window at the end of the hallway, hoping to force it open. The woman stood frozen at the top of the staircase, staring into the shadowy depths of a room that had once been a child's playroom. Hey! I called out to her, forcing my voice to stay steady. We need to keep moving. She turned, but my insistent urgency barely registered on her face. It was as if she was engrossed in the dark corners of that room. I stepped back and noticed a flickering light beneath the door. What? I whispered, glancing toward the door. The light pulsed with a rhythm that felt oddly inviting, yet menacing. The whispers grew stronger, pressing against my mind, demanding my attention. You must finish what you started. I raised my hand to push the door open, but a sudden creak from behind made me spin around. The oppressive atmosphere intensified, and I felt a presence looming in the shadows. Someone or something was in the house with us. I froze, unable to move as dread washed over me. A voice echoed in my head, chilling me to the bone, clearer than before. Finish it. That's when I saw it, an old, dusty photo frame lying askew on the floor, partially hidden beneath debris. My breath hitched. It was the same trinket I had clutched moments ago, only this one was encased in glass. The urgency surged back. I needed answers. But in that moment, I realized I was facing a choice. Turn away and run, or confront whatever the house and that frame demanded. "Are you coming?" I called to the woman, heart pounding wildly. But as I stepped closer to the frame, the temperature in the room dropped, and the whispers turned into a chorus of anguished voices, begging, pleading, "You must finish it." I could feel their desperation wrapping around me. There was no denying it. Something about that frame was crucial, and I had to know what it held. Too late to turn back now. As I reached for it, a shadow flared behind the woman, blocking the staircase. I had awakened whatever haunted this place, and it was ready for a confrontation. My fingers brushed against the cool glass of the frame, and a jolt of energy surged through me. The whispers crescendoed in my head, swirling wildly, a cacophony of "finish it," echoing endlessly. I pulled back, startled, and glanced at the woman. Fear twisted her features as she looked at the shadow creeping closer behind her. "Step back!" I yelled, not fully knowing if it was meant for her or the darkness behind her. The shadow rippled, taking a shape I couldn't define, twisting and pulsing like liquid night. The air around us thickened, turning ice-cold. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I felt an inexplicable pull toward the frame. "What is it?" she asked, her voice quaking. "I don't know," I replied, breathless. "But I think we need to see what's in here first." As I grasped the frame, a jolt shot through me again. This time, a vision flashed before my eyes. I saw fragments of a child's laughter, bright sunlight filtering through a window, and then a sudden darkness swallowing it all. Panic surged through me, and I nearly dropped the frame. I could hear the child's voice again, soft yet strained, saying, "Help me." "Did you see that?" I asked the woman, my voice trembling. Her gaze was fixed on the shadow, now just a few feet away, swirling like smoke. "What are we supposed to help?" she whispered, the words barely escaping her lips. The shadow climbed the wall, creeping toward the ceiling. It felt like it was searching for something, and then it paused, as if it had caught our scent. I knew we were on borrowed time. "Let us break the glass," I shouted, urgency clawing at my throat. "We need to." Before I could finish, the shadow lunged toward us. I ducked instinctively, pulling the woman with me as we stumbled backward, both of us scrambling for safety. I slammed my back against the wall, trying to create distance between us and the entity moving closer. The whispers turned to frantic shouts, echoing around the room. "Finish it! Finish it! Hold on!" I shouted, clutching the frame tighter. A surge of determination washed over me. If this was the key to everything, I had to confront it. "Do you still have the other trinket?" I blurted out, thinking back to the piece I had touched earlier. The woman fumbled in her pocket and produced a small, silver key. "Why?" she asked, confusion etched on her face. I had no time to explain. "I think they're connected. Maybe it's the last thing we need." My mind raced. I didn't understand how, but I knew the two objects together had to reveal something crucial. Suddenly, the shadow jerked, as if the key had heard it. I saw flashes of light erupt from the frame, illuminating the room. The darkness writhed, momentarily distracted. "Now!" I screamed, shoving the frame into her hands. "Use the key." With shaking hands, she turned toward the frame, urgency fueling her movements. I could see the shadow regrouping, its anger palpable. As she slid the key toward the edge of the frame, the whispers shifted, pleading no. "Don't." Then, everything went dark. The lights flickered out in a split second, enveloping us in a heavy silence. My heart thudded. Fear twisted in my stomach as I strained to hear through the suffocating darkness. A voice deep and unnatural breathed through the void. "You will finish it or you will remain lost." I gripped the woman's arm, panic surging again. Something was about to happen, and whatever it was, we were trapped in the middle of it. I gasped, the air thick with tension as I felt her hand tighten around mine. "What do we do?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. I felt the world close in as shadows writhed in the corners, responding to the whispered threat looming over us. Suddenly, in the engulfing silence, I heard the whispers return, echoing deeper than before, now split into two distinct sets. One forced a chill down my spine as it beckoned, "Finish it," while another took on a tone of desperation, pleading, "Help us." They clashed in the air like colliding waves, leaving me grappling with an unshakable feeling that I was at the heart of a long-forgotten battle. I couldn't help but think back to the journal I had found earlier, the ramblings, the warnings. Had the person who wrote it experienced this too? The connection felt too profound to ignore. I knew I had to stand my ground. "We can't leave yet," I said firmly, glancing at the woman. "It's still here, we need to understand what we've uncovered." "Understand what?" "That something wants to trap us." She shot back, but I could see the flicker of a shared resolve in her eyes. "Maybe that's exactly why it wanted to let us go," I argued, feeling the urgency weigh on me. "What if these objects they're part of something larger? Something that can either set us free," or her eyes widened in realization. "Or force us into its grasp." "Exactly," I breathed, pulling the frayed edges of my thoughts together. The frame clutched in her hands practically hummed with energy as if it was alive. "We have to decide what we want to do." The shadows danced, and a low growl erupted from the darkness. This was our chance. I took a step forward, and the air crackled around us. "Whatever is here, whatever is haunting this place, it thrives on fear. We need to confront it, we can't let it control us." A rift opened in the whispering shadows, revealing an outline that sent a shiver through my entire being. It was the figure I had glimpsed before, now more vivid and corporeal than ever, a twisted aberration of anguish and sorrow. It surged forward, and as it did, the whispers swelled, wrapping around us like a noose, stifling any fleeting thoughts of escape. "Finish what you started," it shrieked, and I felt my heart race in response to the command. My grip on reality tightened as I reached for the trinket, releasing what was left of my doubts with a deep breath. With that action, the energetic connection flared to life. The room flickered with blinding light, illuminating not just the attic but the very fabric of the nightmarish world around us. Glancing sideways, I could see fear replaced by wildfire determination in the woman's eyes. She raised the key high, poised to unleash whatever power rested within the frame. "Let us do this," I urged, our fear morphing into bravery, as we stepped forward together. She thrust the key toward the framed photograph, its surface shimmering with newfound light. We were entwined in this twisting moment, a collective heartbeat connecting our wills. Just as the key made contact, the shadows howled in protest, thrashing in a tempest of rage. Light burst forth from the frame, enveloping us, illuminating the secrets it held so tightly, showing glimpses of the children in the photos, their laughter now echoing in harmonies of sorrow. "What happened to them?" I shouted over the chaos. "Why are they trapped here?" The shadows lunged closer, threatening to engulf us entirely, but we stood our ground. The haunting visage of the figure approached, morphing as it drew near, transitioning from rage to despair. "Help me," it cried, a voice laden with anguish. "Do not let them forget." Struggling with the weight of its words, we faced down the haunted spirit, realizing in that moment its tether to this world was rooted in forgotten memories and tormented hearts. "We will not forget," I shouted back, feeling a sense of purpose surge through me. In perfect sync, my heart joined hers as we pushed the key deeper into the frame where it clicked with finality. The room ignited in blinding white light, collapsing all shadows into brilliant fragments that scattered into the night. The cries of the shadows morphed into something ethereal, almost serene, lifting like a wind swept away. With the echoes fading, a sense of calm washed over us as the chaos began to dissolve. I stood still, breathless, the air returning to stillness. And yet, even in that peaceful moment, melancholy pulsed through me like an underground river, a remnant of what was left behind. I turned to the woman, where desperation and resolution mingled in a shadow of a smile. But questions lingered in my mind. Had we truly helped? Was the darkness vanquished, or would it rise again, seeking another chance to bind a soul? What exactly had we awakened? As I looked back toward the attic entrance, the peace of the night felt fragile. We stepped cautiously toward the door, knowing we had finished something profound, but the nature of it remained hauntingly unanswered. I extended my hand to her, and together we crossed the threshold into the world beyond the haunted house, but lingering uncertainty gripped at my heels. I would never return again, but I knew a piece of that night would haunt me still. I moved away from the shadows, but I could never fully escape their echo. I still think about it sometimes, wondering about the things that lingered just out of sight, and whether some places are better left undisturbed.